Hello students, in this part we will discuss on pollen grains. Pollen grains. These are the male germ cell. Male germ cell. Pollen grains are also known as male germ cell. A pollen grain is covered with two protective layers known as sporoderm. A pollen grain is covered with two protective layers. Which are collectively called, means outer and inner layer, both layer collectively called sporoderm, which are collectively called sporoderm. The sporoderm consists of two layers. Both sporoderm means it is the collectively layers, two protective layers, that is called sporoderm. A sporoderm may be two types: outer layer. This outer layer is called exine, and the inner layer which is called intine. A pollen grain consists covered with two layers. Both the layers collectively called sporoderm. A sporoderm consists two layers: outer known as exine and inner known as intine. Suppose this is the male germ cell pollen grain. The outer layer is known as exine. This is the exine, and inner layer is known as intine. In this germ cell consists one site where the pollen grain germinate. It contains a small pore. This pore through the pollen grain germinate, that is called germ pore. Firstly, we will discuss on exine. What is exine? It is the outer layer of pollen grain. Clear? This layer is made up of a hard resistance organic material, that is called sporopollenin. Hard resistance organic material called sporopollenin. Sporopollenin is the some hardest substance which does not decompose in high acidic, alkaline और high temperature. एक ऐसा सब्सटेंस जो किसी के द्वारा हाई टेम्परेचर, हाई एसिडिक मीडियम में, हाई बेसिस मीन्स एल्कालाइन में मीडियम रख देते तो डिजेनरेट नहीं होता. This sporopollenin, this is not easily degenerated by high temperature, acidic or alkaline nature. This sporopollenin maintain the pollen grain survive for a long time. So, due to presence of sporopollenin, the pollen grains are also used as fossilization. What is fossilization? Formation of fossil is called fossilization. Process जो जिसमें fossil बनता है. Fossil means dead and decay parts of plants, animals. Fossilization, due to the presence of sporopollenin, this layer is very hard, made up of organic resistance material. It does not easily degenerated by the acidic, high temperature, high basic media. So it protects the pollen for a long time. Clear? One at exine at one place where the sporopollenin not present. एक्साइन के हर लेयर के ऊपर, हर साइड के ऊपर क्या स्पोरोपोलिन प्रेजेंट है, एक साइड को छोड़कर। वो साइड क्या है? द स्मॉल एरिया फ्रॉम वेयर द पोलन ग्रेन जर्मिनेट, दैट इज कॉल्ड जर्म पोर। जर्म पोर, द फाइन या टाइनी पोर थ्रू द पोलन ग्रेन जर्मिनेट, दैट इज कॉल्ड जर्म पोर। एट द जर्म पोर देयर इज नो स्पोरोपोलिन present. The second layer is called intine. It is the inner layer of pollen grain. This one is the outer, this one is inner. Inner layer is made up of cellulose and pectin. This layer is made up of cellulose and pectin. Clear? What is pollen grain? Pollen grain is the male germ cell. How is pollen grain designed? Pollen grain is covered with two protective layers called sporoderm, collectively called sporoderm. Sporoderm contain two layers, outer exine, inner intine. Exine consists, या exine is made up of a hard substance, sporopollenin, fossilization करने में, लेकिन एक साइड के ऊपर प्रेजेंट नहीं होता जहाँ पर जर्म पोर प्रेजेंट होता है। जर्म पोर से पोलन ग्रेन जर्मिनेट होते हैं। Inner layer, that is called intine. This inner layer intine is made up of cellulose and pectin. Clear? The next one is, there are some pollen grain which may cause allergy. Some plants pollen grain cause allergy. So pollen grains are known as pollen allergens. Pollen allergens. What do you understand by allergens? The substances or material which cause allergy are known as allergens. अब यहाँ पर pollen है, तो इसका मतलब pollen grain कुछ plants कैसे होते हैं जो एलर्जी काज करते हैं। That may cause a chronic respiratory disease such like as asthma and bronchitis. Some species of pollen grains may cause allergy. Those pollen grain which cause allergies are known as pollen allergens. Those are called pollen allergens. This may cause many chronic respiratory diseases. The allergens may cause chronic respiratory disease such as asthma and bronchitis. So these are known as pollen allergens. The plants whose pollen grains are called allergy, such as, for example, amaranthus plant, Chenopodium, and Parthenium. Parthenium is also known as carrot grass. The pollen grain of these plants may cause allergy, so these species plants pollen grains are known as pollen allergens. Next, pollen product. Pollen grains are rich of nutrients such as vitamins. So there are many tablets or syrups which are made up of pollen grains used by the athletics and race horses. Pollen grains are rich of nutrient. So in some countries it is used by athletic and race horses for energy. There are many tablets and syrups are made up of pollen product or pollen grains. So this is the pollen product. Next one is pollen viability. Pollen viability. What is pollen viability? As we know that pollen grain from anther after gaining maturity transfer from anther to stigma, और स्टिग्मा के ऊपर फॉलो अप होने के पश्चात मतलब दिस वन इज द प्लेटफॉर्म ऑफ स्टिग्मा, पोलन ग्रेन यहाँ पर फॉलो अप होते हैं। अब पोलन ग्रेन की वो टाइम पीरियड जो जर्मिनेशन के लिए स्टिग्मा के ऊपर फॉलो अप होने के पश्चात लेते हैं, उस टाइम पीरियड को क्या बोलते हैं? पोलन वाइब्रेटी। इट इज द जर्मिनेशन टाइम पीरियड, जर्मिनेशन ऑफ पोलन ग्रेन time after landing on stigma। स्टिग्मा के ऊपर फॉलो होने के पश्चात पोलन ग्रेन जितना टाइम जर्मिनेशन के लिए ले, दैट टाइम पीरियड इज नोन एज पोलन वाइब्रेटी। पोलन वाइब्रेटी इज डिफरेंट इन डिफरेंट प्लांट्स, सच लाइक एज इन सम प्लांट इट इज ओनली 30 मिनट्स। पोलन वाइब्रेटी इन डिफरेंट प्लांट्स सच लाइक एज 30 मिनट्स, सच एज राइस एंड व्हीट। राइस और व्हीट प्लांट के ऊपर जो पोलन ग्रेन स्टिग्मा में फॉलो होते हैं, नियरली विद इन 30 मिनट्स दे स्टार्ट टू जर्मिनेट। एंड इन सम मंथ्स और फ्यू मंथ्स कई ऐसे भी प्लांट्स हैं जिसके स्टिग्मा में पोलन ग्रेन फॉलो होते हैं, कुछ महीने ले लेते हैं, जैसे कि सोलेनेसी, रोजेसी एंड लेगुमेसी। This is the pollen viability. And next one is last one, pollen bank. Pollen grain are stored in pollen banks so that they can be used later, but they are stored in a special techniques. Pollen banks. Pollen grains are stored for later uses, means at the time of pollen grain mature there is no use, we will use this later. The area where the pollen grains are stored for later use in pollen banks। और pollen bank में कैसे? pollen grains, the pollen grains are stored in liquid nitrogen at minus 196 degrees Celsius temperature। Pollen grains are stored in liquid nitrogen at minus 196 degrees Celsius temperature. This process is called cryo preservation। What is cryo preservation? Storing of pollen grain in liquid nitrogen at minus 196 degrees Celsius temperature so that we can use these pollen grain later. This is called cryo preservation. Clear?